Oh,
Jake usually comes
yeah, he
over
gave
and-
me.
He did.
He gave me
Okay.
the thumbs up. Yep.
There we are.
Yep.
Now we're on the screen. That's how I-
All right.
Bad posture.
Me too.
Call to order the Redevelopment Authority, May 15th, 2019. Andrea, could you please call the roll?
Belter,
Here.
Birmingham, Pitts,
Here.
Lasky,
Here.
Planick,
Here.
Stamp,
Here.
O'Meara.
Here. New business. We'll first open with the public hearing spotlight designation for 613 West 9th Avenue and open that public hearing. Do we have anyone here from the public to comment? Approve spotlight designation, approve acquisition of property at 613 West 9th Avenue, $24,200.
We just need to close the public hearing then.
And we'll close the public hearing.
I'll move approval of Resolution 19-12, approve spotlight designation.
Second.
Any discussion?
Do we have any money left?
It's early in the year.
Yes, we do. Maybe you could show a few pictures, just so people know we're talking about the 9th Avenue corridor, which is one of the critical corridors from the Central City Investment Strategy. Number of blighted properties they recommended that are acquired, either rehabbed or demolished. We have several pictures that were in your packet that show the exteriors. Meet a lot of the criteria for blight about the components that have deteriorated with the roof and the siding and the windows and the doors and the general condition. And then, of course, 9th Avenue is one of our gateway corridors, which we're trying to clean up. We do have $24,200 available, if I recall, in our CDBG program right now. So yeah, the long answer, yes, we do have the funds available to acquire it.
You know, the sales summary on this is really strange. Explain that.
Looks like it was a foreclosure to a foreclosure to a foreclosure, and then county finally took it for back taxes and then offered it to the city.
So the county is the owner right now.
Correct.
It said 24.2 plus closing costs. Do we know what that closing costs might be? And my second part of that question is, do we demolish?
I can answer that one. Yes, we typically demolish and pay the tipping fees.
And that would, runs about?
In the hole.
I mean,
A few $1,000s depending on staff availability, because we use Public Works to do that.
Okay.
For the demolition. And then the closing costs, are they a few $1,000s, Ms. Brandt?
200 or 300 with the county. It's not that bad. So, because we don't do title and all of those other things, it's just a straight transaction.
Do you have asbestos costs on this?
No, I won't until after we acquire.
So we will incur. We have the inspection done.
Mhm.
All the asbestos are remediated before we tear it down. And typically, we actually have someone who's trained in asbestos during the demolition, just to make sure that no hidden asbestos comes to light.
So your all-in cost would not be more than 30, probably less.
That's a decent guess.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
Considering that we have a number of topics on the agenda today regarding approval for dollars spent, I'm wondering if you can give us a recap of the current budget availability for these type activities.
Our 2018 Community Development Block Grant Program, we have probably, let me say, about $40,000 left, but we are also going to be using the 2019 Block Grant Program, which is also before you this evening for your support. So there will be funds available to do all of the acquisitions on tonight's agenda.
So the leftover funds from 2018 will roll over into the 2019 allowance?
Yes, it doesn't roll over, it just, we use up those funds until they're all used. Yes.
Okay, and when does 2019 begin?
It started May 1st.
May 1st, thank you.
Any other discussion on 1912? All right, can we please call the roll?
Lasky,
Aye.
Panic,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Vince,
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Actually, I think I was supposed to read that 3 times.
Public hearing.
The public hearing, yes. Spotlight designation, 613 West 9th. Approve spotlight designation, approve acquisition of property at 613 West 9th Avenue, $24,200. And a third time, 19-12, approve spotlight designation, approve acquisition of property at 613 West 9th Avenue, $24,200. All right, moving on to 1913. This is another public hearing, spotlight designation for 668 North Main Street. Approve spotlight designation, approve acquisition of property at 668 North Main Street, $57,000. And we would open that up for public comment at this time. Do we have anyone here from the public to comment on 668 North Main?
Yes.
Could you please step up to the microphone?
Sure. I'm Kyle Kehoe. I had the property listed at 668 North Main, so I guess I'm open to any questions that anybody has on the property itself. During the discussion, but other than that, I'm just here for questions, I guess.
So that 668 North Main, that used to be a tavern, and it has some structural challenges, correct?
Yeah, it was a tavern, there was an apartment on the upper level of it with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. There was some type of water main or water problem about 2 years ago in which the majority of the interior was demolished. Much of the electrical and the plumbing was replaced. I think there was 2 new furnaces, also a new roof that was put on it. But in terms of where it's at right now, there would still need to be a tremendous amount of investment into the property in order to rehab it. There's, all floor coverings. I'm not aware of the foundation or how the structural is, but I mean, obviously could be inspected, but it's in need of rehab at the very least, intense rehab.
Did you approach the city for the property for sale?
What's that?
Did you approach the city for their interest?
I had not. The seller that I'm working with, I think they had contacted Darlene specifically, so I had not.
Got it.
And then
You're
after
the agent for the property?
I am an agent. Yeah, it was listed
Thank you.
already.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kehoe? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll read that a second time. Approve spotlight designation, approve acquisition of property at 668 North Main Street, $57,000. And a third time, approve spotlight designation, approve acquisition of property at 668 North Main Street, $57,000. And do we need a motion to close the public hearing? We'll just close the
moved.
public hearing. All right. Moving on, 1914, determination of necessity, establish fair market value, and authorize purchase for 653 Mount Vernon Street.
Wait, wait,
Or
wait.
take
We
the.
We need to
We need
take
to
an
take them.
I'm sorry.
action on 1913.
I'll move approval of resolution 19-13.
I'll second.
Yes.
I have questions of Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Yeah. If you recall, I was not excited about this property at the last RDA meeting. I'm aware that we now have declared the area running north along Main Street up to New York is an area of attention. Can you give me some idea of what could be done with that particular block? It seems to me what we have is a lot of properties in that block that probably aren't going to change in terms of ownership, and are buying that little sliver. I cannot envision how that is going to speed us up in terms of acquisition of property and fixing up the whole area. Help me out.
This map here shows the RDA owned properties.
Right.
Recall, when we did the RFP process for this piece, we also suggested to interested parties that they combine that with the property on North Main Street as well. We've had developers approach us to do exactly that. They'd be interested in acquiring this in addition to that, and this piece would actually be part of an addition that they could add on to that in the future.
Okay.
We don't have that before you tonight.
Right.
It would be my expectation you'd have that in the next few meetings for the RDA.
Okay, so something, and that would be the property that is at 656
Yep.
right now, and so there is possibly something in the works. We'll leave it vague. Okay, thank you.
Since I don't have anything to present to the RDA, I don't want to set expectations.
That's fine.
How
Okay.
about 664A?
That is a good question. There's no information on that property at this point in time.
So to follow up with Steve, what I'd prefer to see, and I'm not sure that it's possible, what I'd prefer to see would be a package deal for this property. That 668, 664, and 656 could all be addressed together. And looking at it, I'm not sure that this property, if we wait, will go anywhere. So I don't really have a fear that that there's a competitor out there that's gonna just eat this up, that we wouldn't want to eat it up anyway. My preference in the way I'm leaning would be to hold off for now on that property until we could understand if we could get a bigger package into this. So that's just my feedback on it. Looking at everything that we're looking at, it's an oddball sliver unless there's other things that are there, and I hear that there may be other stuff coming, but I'd like to see this maybe put together as a package.
So,
And what, I mean, there is a question about 664, because, I mean, even if we got 656, but nothing happened on 664, we're stuck with a sliver.
can I ask a question about 656? That's the car dealership, right? We're not talking about acquiring that, are we?
No, we're not talking about acquiring it. That would be the developer's responsibility to acquire
Okay,
that.
I see.
Oh, thank you. That's the car dealership, not the old meat market?
No, it's across this.
So
it's-
Burger Sausage Company is the, I'm sorry, you're right,
I'm
you're
sorry,
right.
656.
You're correct. I'm a couple buildings down.
That's okay.
See on the map, and you're looking straight down on it.
But then did I understand you to say that that would not be RDA's responsibility to get 656? That would be the developer?
Correct.
So,
And that was my expectation on 664 as well.
okay, so then we would not be putting together a package. The developer would be responsible for purchasing those.
I don't know if you.
Correct.
And then what about 644?
That's part of the developer's proposed area that they were looking at as well,
So they would take 644 all the way to 664.
Okay.
possibly.
And
Yes.
that would be their responsibility.
Yes.
Why isn't the developer interested in 668?
They are.
They are. I mean, the
But they
question
are.
is, are we
it was based on
making
a-
it easy for the developer?
No, it was based on a discussion with staff, also based on the RFP that we previously did and RDA comments that there needed to be some kind of access on Main Street. So even if this other proposal potentially doesn't go through, this 668 would provide an additional access to the Jefferson Street lots for a potential development. not necessarily a good access onto Main Street, but it might provide another ingress or egress, because that was one of the concerns of the RDA. And that's why we looked at the parcel when the owner offered it to us.
Is it wide enough?
Yeah, 30 feet wide.
30 feet? But we're really only acquiring it to make our Jefferson Street block more
Accessible.
Developable.
We only had one response when we did the RFP on Jefferson Street.
Correct.
Before. We haven't done an RFP with this
Right.
spur out to Main Street, so we're not, we assume it'd be of more value. of course.
Right, and especially with Jefferson being a one-way street, it just allows that extra access point.
Of course, the home run would still be to combine it with the properties along Main Street down to 644, so that it could be a multi-use, commercial residential project, which the RDA made it clear they would prefer to see on that block.
But even if that doesn't happen, it's still more attractive to have that access.
Just for the Jefferson
Right.
Street properties, yes.
$57,000 more attractive?
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
That's a
I
good
mean-
question.
Because you aren't changing the developable in Jefferson Street. They still can only
Yeah.
put so many units
Right.
on that property. There is a plan they're working on, I know that,
Or
for Jefferson Street, but I don't know,
that would require,
I don't know that.
With being North Main Street, is that considered a highway, and would they need state approval to make another cut or to use another access? If it's a combined property?
I believe
45 goes.
the city still has jurisdiction over the access points in that section of 45.
are we expecting a proposal in the fairly near future on Jefferson?
Yes.
We are.
We had it on the agenda until last week. We had to take it off for calculations that the developer wanted to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, it's
I
gonna
wish I
come
had
up
the whole
soon.
package for you, but I only have half the package.
Okay.
Call the question.
Well, I'm going to come back to Jason's comment. I mean, I think we've got a bunch of moving pieces here, and, if things are really moving in such a way, then, I would be inclined to support it. If it's the kind of thing that would hold for a little while until we see what's actually happening with the developer, then I guess I would probably hold off today and look hard at it, at the time when we saw more of the pieces coming. Simply because I don't think without the pieces, this is a very good investment at this time.
Can we table it?
Certainly.
Not really. You either have to approve it or deny
I
it.
was gonna say, we already
because
have
there's an
a second,
offer
yeah.
based on an offer to purchase, so
Okay.
to meet the conditions.
So deny, and then we'd have to bring it back at a future date with another offer. You are right, Ms. Brandt.
Yep.
So, it does a couple of things for it. Obviously.
I'm sorry, can you step up?
I sure can. Obviously, I can't go too much into anything that was drafted for the property or anything like that, but there is interest in it. I mean, I still get people that call about it that have interest in the property itself for acquiring it. I mean, so it's lucrative for people because they'll see it. There's no guarantee to anything like that, obviously, because, a lot of people are going to come in. It may be over their head, but it is definitely something that's top of radar. I mean, I have people that want me to call them as soon as or if anything falls apart on it. So, I mean, and I'm not saying that to say that I have no need to. I mean, no matter what, it's likely to sell, so. That's all I had to say for that.
If we didn't buy this property now, would that have any negative implication, or negative reaction for the developer on the other pieces?
Not on their phase one, I don't believe, but the only reason potentially not going that far is the 664, that the developer has not been able to make contact with the owner.
That would be an alternative access point if that were to come to pass and they were to purchase that, if this didn't. But it's my understanding, there's been like numerous attempts to contact that owner.
Yes.
I guess another item too is there is currently a liquor license on the building. The liquor license expires July 1st. So for the value of the building, it's very important that the liquor license would remain attached to the building, just because without it, it's brick and mortar. Obviously with that, it's allowed to operate as a tavern. And, if they lose that opportunity, lose marketing time or anything that might be, could be detrimental to the property itself. And there's an extra liquor license that'll free up, so.
So that kind of changes the picture and the dollar amount, doesn't it? Given that the liquor license is attached to that?
No, it's all included in our acquisition price. If the RDA and the council approve it, the owner just surrenders the license at closing.
And then it goes into the liquor license
Mhm.
pool with the council.
Oh, so
Determines how they
it
use-
doesn't stay
No.
with the property for the new
No.
developer?
Correct.
No.
Okay.
Special meeting to keep the liquor license.
Question for Mr. David. To the extent that you can, I'm trying to work out several scenarios on pieces of property here. The discussion with the developer is primarily about 656. Does it, to what extent does 664 and 668 figure into any discussion?
It's all the RDA property, and it's 634 and 656. He's desirous of expanding that to include 668. If 664 comes available, he'd include that as well.
Is it critical? Does the deal stand or fall on those two northern properties?
I think the project can go without those properties,
Okay,
but it certainly makes it more
right,
useful for him if those properties were available.
right. What if 668 is available and 664 is not available?
Then he's gonna have to be patient until 664 would become available.
Okay. And when is that?
We've not made contact with the owner.
Is that right? Yeah.
Well, and then does that drive up the price for 664? Because now it's like prime property if you want to go fully with that development.
Only if the owner of 664 is not, oh, I see what you're saying, potentially.
Yeah.
But even if the proposed development doesn't go through, the acquisition of 668 would give a second access for the Jefferson Street redevelopment project.
Which we're speculating on in terms of whether the plans would even include the need for the access out there.
And we also own those two slivers next to 656, meaning that we could use those as access points for that property too, correct?
No.
We don't own anything.
Oh, we don't know, there's two?
Nope.
Thing in blue.
Okay.
We
Nothing goes
just
to man.
own the Jefferson
Got it,
Street
got it.
lots.
Okay, so worst case, we buy it, and Jefferson either doesn't go through or it doesn't use the sliver, and 664 remains, and maybe the owner to the north would extend the parking lot and buy it.
Yes, if we don't.
Right, if the other thing doesn't work. Right.
if you were almost ready to come to us with a proposal for that property, but you had to take it back, are we talking 2 weeks and you would have more information? And,
The next meeting is.
July
On 17th.
15th,
but I
17th.
understand we have special meetings.
Yes, we
Meetings
do.
periodically.
It depends when the developer would submit his proposal.
If the developer submitted their proposal, I'd probably pull the RDA.
But that also would require, if we don't approve it today, it will require another 30-day public hearing notice.
Oh.
So
Okay.
it would be July at the earliest that we could
Meet all
probably,
requirements.
yep.
Is there any interest in the parking lot expansion?
Have not
In this-
contacted them.
In the scenario that,
No.
Oh, that neighboring property owner hasn't contacted us
Okay.
about that.
and we would have to do the demolition.
Correct.
I'm big on demolition, have you noticed?
Yes,
Yeah.
no.
There aren't any party walls.
No. There should be sufficient space that city crews could take it down.
Any further thoughts? Ready for the roll call?
Lasky,
Nay, as proposed at this time.
Tonic,
I'm gonna hope for a special meeting, so I'll say nay.
Stan,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Vince,
No.
Palmieri,
No.
3-3.
What do we do in that case?
I don't know.
Tie.
Tie vote then?
Tie vote
Oh, okay.
loses. It doesn't matter.
One tie,
No,
all tie.
I mean, this was a tough one, and,
Where's the number from?
you know, my feeling is
This one makes more
that
sense.
we are,
Excellent.
you know, we're on the cusp, but we're still, I think, really kind of speculating about what's going to happen here. And with 664, not knowing and not being able to contact, you know, I'm afraid we may end up with a sliver of land that we will have paid for and paid for the demolition. You know, with a little more certitude, I'd be a positive vote for it. But we have to deal with things as they are today, you know.
And if we would to come back in June, even a month from now, that still gives us enough time that we wouldn't lose the liquor license.
No, I don't have
That's
enough time
going
to do a
anyway.
public hearing notice.
Have a 30-day public hearing.
And then have a quorum. So,
Oh,
Thank you.
All right. 1914, determination of necessity, established fair market value, authorized purchase, 653 Mount Vernon Street, $18,000.
Move 1914.
I'll second.
Yes.
I'll second.
Discussion?
All right, can we pull this? Is that what, do we have other views of the property?
So views of what?
Just looking for the other views of the
Oh, yeah.
property. Question, Is there a facility through the city that in a situation where there's dilapidated property that RDA or the city doesn't want to, doesn't choose to purchase, that forces the property owner to either bring the site up to code or have the property owner demolish?
Yes, we do that. We go through that process regularly on other properties in the city.
Condemnation.
There'd be a code enforcement process where we give them warnings and then citations, and then we potentially end up with a razor repair order, and then we end up in Winnebago County Circuit Court with a potential court order to do the demolition, and you have the staff that works on those right here.
If the property is sufficiently dilapidated that the nuisance property applies.
And in this case, would that?
I'm not familiar with this property, so I can't,
Sure.
can't tell you for sure what the issues may be.
The reason for my question is because it's noticeably in an area that's really not adjacent to much existing property. I understand this is it's in a highly attractive place to want to redevelop, right? So I absolutely understand that, and my question was regarding, if we don't touch this, is there another facility that can help address the current situation at this property? And unfortunately, I'm hearing there are facilities to do that. I'm not hearing that it applies in this case or does not apply in this case. And so without that information, I feel that I'm struggling to make a decision on this.
I'm assuming the owner would then list it on the open market, and anybody could buy it to rent it out or rehab it or own it and occupy it themselves.
Very good.
It certainly wouldn't prevent them from doing that.
So the problem is the raise statute is based on the structure, and if it's the poor foundation or poor roof or poor walls, it's not based on if it looks terrible.
I understand.
Needs siding. So what happens is if it's still structurally sufficient but looks terrible otherwise, and we can't statutory raise it, it might just sit there and keep getting worse and worse and worse until it becomes structurally but sometimes that can take quite a while, and a lot of neighbor complaints and other complaints. So I don't know anything about this house, how the structure is.
It just, yeah, all we have here is, I don't see anything in here about the condition.
Staff has inspected it, and there are structural issues on the interior, but we didn't supply those pictures. The walls and the floors are very uneven and require a lot of repair.
I spoke with Darlene about this in between meetings, just need some more information on it. And one of the things that I was curious about was how this came to the city, and it's the property owner approached the city, from what I understand. So, from what I understand, they haven't taken, do we know if they've taken the approach of going to market with the property to see if there's somebody who would be willing to put money into it to improve it?
No, they have not. Her husband was the one that took care of the rental property. He passed, and she doesn't want to have to deal with it. So she heard that the city sometimes buys properties, so she approached me.
And up to this point, it had been a rental property.
Correct.
So Darlene, did you do the inspection, or you said staff inspected?
Yes.
So what are are there structural things?
It's on a slab or piers or unknown. The floor is very uneven. When you first walk in, you walk down before you step up. So that would be a big structural issue, so it's just not a project for rehab. It would just be a demolition. Now, I have not talked to owners on either side to see if they are interested in expanding their lots, or we would just do land assemblage for future redevelopment like we have on the Jefferson Street side.
And this is or is not in a redevelopment area?
It's in the Erie
It's in the Near East.
And the RDA in the past has expressed their concern about the Jefferson Street neighborhood, saying that it's been difficult to redevelop Jefferson Street because of the surrounding neighborhood, and directed staff to look for ways to improve the surrounding neighborhood around Jefferson to help that redevelopment as well.
Do we have a plan right now for 672? The part the RDA owned?
On Jefferson?
Oh,
No.
no. We just recently acquired that. We are working on asbestos abatement before demolition. Again, that's just a land assemblage for a future redevelopment area, either like on Jefferson or like we did over in the South Shore area, where the Miles Kimball properties were, and like we're doing on 9th Avenue.
So we did just approve that one, and I think part of the thought
Okay.
process of doing that was it's directly across the street from that new potential development area.
Right.
And there's been comments that we've heard about, when trying to develop on that property and looking across the street at the dilapidated properties on Jefferson, that it may lower interest or lower value. And so we were looking at steps to see how we could participate in improving that view across Jefferson Street.
The
So-
people who were looking at proposing on Jefferson expressed a concern about what that neighborhood looked to the east of that property.
But they couldn't see
So that's
over on
just a
Mount
little
Vernon.
more detail.
No, they could not see Mount Vernon.
Correct. Yep.
Six-
I was just giving history as to that one we
Oh.
recently acquired.
672 would be a developable lot, correct?
Yes.
Size-wise, but this
It's
is
a
not,
lot,
right?
It's a lot of records, so yes, it could be rebuilt on. Very small lot, but yes, it's a lot of records, so it could be built on.
Or do we wait until 2 or 3 in a row are available?
Mhm.
And then make it available for redevelopment.
Would Habitat have any, I mean, we've got 2 more for Habitat coming up. Would Habitat at all be interested in this piece?
It's possible, we haven't talked to them about it yet. Like, I haven't talked to them about it.
No, I usually wait until we own them.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I don't know what their plan is for how many houses they want to do.
I last heard at the consortium meeting, I believe, they were looking at trying to up it to 2 or 3 a year. Coming, That's what Tom
Expressed
Simon-
interest in making sure the RDA is aware that they're interested in buying available lots whenever we have them available. They like to have inventory that they can offer their clients/customers to pick the neighborhoods that they might want to live in, so they don't want just 1 or 2 at a time, they want a selection to
Okay.
from is what they've conveyed to us.
So there could be some quick turnaround on this, once it was demolished. I mean,
Possible,
Possible.
it's still a narrow lot, I don't want
Yes.
to oversell it, it's
Yeah.
still a
Yeah,
narrow lot.
it's- And that's why I have not approached the adjacent property owners either, only because I don't do that until we own it.
So from my perspective on this, I think that I'm leaning against it, and not because I don't believe in things like this, but for the fact that I think that I'm not sure that all angles have been, I'm not sure that all opportunities have been looked into for this property. And that if we don't approve this today, I think that process can take form. And if this comes back to us for approval, I wouldn't have a problem approving it after there's maybe further thought of if this can be done in the private market, rather than the public dollars being used to fund it. So even though it's a really low dollar value, and it doesn't include the tear down of the home, or to get it back into just a developable lot, and I know that there's probably a little bit of challenge in developing a lot this tiny. So I'm just leaning against it until we have more information as to if there's public market interest for this at all, or other, so.
I expect if they put it on the private market, it will be purchased and rented out like they had been doing.
have any, there was reference to quality of life. Do we have any correction notice history on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
We're, another question for Mr. Davis. I mean, we're buying this primarily because it's in really bad shape. Is that correct? I mean, we're
The
not.
owners offered it to us.
Right.
Less than 50 cents on the,
Right, and it's not terribly expensive. But in terms of acquiring more property in the area to do something else with it, that's probably not high on the agenda right now.
I wouldn't say it's on the near-term agenda, that's for sure.
Right, yeah. So that does put us back to getting rid of a substandard house at a relatively low cost.
Yep.
Yeah.
My expectation would be that if it goes to the private market,
It'll-
landlord would buy it and then hold on to it.
It'll be
indefinitely.
substandard, right, yeah.
Although they'd be required to bring it up to code, correct?
No,
A landlord would be required to bring the
not
property to
necessarily.
code? There's no enforcement that could be done?
We
Nope.
rarely get called
Really?
unless there's a complaint.
Nope.
Or if they actually pull a building permit to do any improvements.
But if it was formerly owned, owner occupied, and it's vacant now, it's my understanding from inspections, don't they have to do an occupancy permit?
No, we do not have a rule like that. It's vacant and you can reoccupy it for the same use without that occupancy permit.
What triggers the occupancy permit?
When they would actually pull a permit to make improvements. So
Uh-huh.
if they don't change anything, if they would come in and say they want to.
Unless we had a vacant
redo-
building registry.
That is correct. Or if they would rent it, go into the rental inspection registry, and then the tenant would request an inspection.
And that is in one of our 5 districts, I believe, isn't it?
Yes, it would be. But I don't know when over the next 5 years we'd even send that letter.
Last question, I suppose this is true of any piece of property that we're looking at. Do we have any projects that we think are more deserving of $18,000 than this one? I mean, I think that's an underlying
Yeah.
question that we face all the time, given scarce resources.
Reset
Try to
liquor
have
license.
the 2019 plan kind of identifies what we think the budget is going to be for 2019 for these scarce resources.
Mhm.
And we allocate some to public services and we allocate some to owner rehab. But there is a section that we can and have done allocated funds for acquisition demolition of blighted properties. So we certainly don't have to do that. I don't think we have to do acquisition demolition for our HUD dollars. But it's certainly something the city's done for the last 20-plus years with block grant dollars. And I'm not sure there's been how many dollars have been spent over the years.
City really does not have any other funds available for the acquisition of slum and blight. So that's where the block grant funds are used.
You can't just accrue these and carry them forward to get to a $500,000 balance and make a big splash. I mean, you can't,
Oh, no, you have to
You have to-
meet
you have these
percentages and,
12 to 18-month timelines.
yeah, and
Timeliness.
timeliness,
Right. Is a requirement.
spending ratios,
Right.
and
If you don't spend your money on time, you will not get more money. So we could certainly reallocate this maybe to owner rehab. But then we'd have to, I don't know if we'd have to amend our plan / do we have enough owner rehab projects to get done in time?
it, being only a 2-bedroom with a very, very small bedrooms, and the amount of work to bring it up to code, because we would have to bring it up to code if we were to sell it, we would lose money. We don't have enough equity, there wouldn't be enough equity in the project to realize a profit. We'd lose money.
The question would be how much would we lose?
Would we then have an affordable home unit that someone would acquire, that we would lose less money, that someone would have.
Two-bedroom resales are very hard, as some of our housing partners have found out. They're having a hard time selling their two bedrooms that they have rehabbed.
One time we've done this on Bowen Street.
Bone Street.
We actually made a little money because they donated the property to the city and the RDA.
Desirable area that somebody was looking at.
And that was a 3 bedrooms that I remember.
Correct. Three-bedroom, full basement, a nice big lot.
But still a basement we had to correct with the.
Correct. Yeah,
It's not like we didn't spend money on
No.
the property. We spent
correct.
probably $100,000 on the property, but we sold it for like $119. That's the one time we've actually gone through the whole rehab process as you're describing. And we came out good on that project. This one, we could easily spend $50,000 to $100,000 and we'd be lucky to sell it for 50.
Yep.
I have a question for you. And you may know, you may not know. As the homeowner of this, is there a tax incentive for them to try to get the most value, the least value out of this? In other words, if they were to donate this property to the city, would there be a beneficial tax benefit to them as opposed to the city purchasing it for $11,000?
Depends if you offset the state taxes if her husband died, or, although,
There's-
because they're married, probably not. I mean, it would only be a 30% donation credit at the most.
Okay.
So if you donated it for 50, you'd only get 15 out of it, so,
Okay. That's helpful.
yeah,
Thank you.
probably not. Plus you'd have to pay the attorney to tell you what.
There it goes.
And your accountant.
Right, an accountant. Well, we've talked about this for years, this patchwork quilt of acquisitions, and when the money needs to be used, and we have blight, and we get a 50% offer on a beat-up property, we've, in the past, just grabbed them. And yeah, we've got pieces all over the place, but, $18,000 to get rid of that property is a fair number. If we want to change our strategy and not get rid of these properties,
You gotta know me as the demolition girl here, but that doesn't include demolition.
oh,
No.
No.
Oh, and then estimate on that was 10,000 here, that's why I asked the question earlier. So is it worth 28,000? And I don't know the answer.
We're not gonna
With a
sell it.
narrow lot like
yeah, we're not going to sell it for that, no.
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 You'd have to have a contiguous or something to have it be worth that.
But, that's how all of our acquisitions
Yeah,
have
they're-
been. I mean, it's based on an agreed-upon price, and then we do look at demolition costs, including asbestos inspection, abatement, and then the demolition itself.
In a perfect world, we would be able to get 2 or 3 of these houses in a row at the same time and take it all down, but life doesn't work that way, unfortunately. We can-
Take the whole block down and put a nice gentrification project
absolutely.
in there, but,
And I think we talked about that,
Yeah.
to acquire those and relocate the people, we're only
Right.
talking $1 million
Right.
a block.
minimum.
And I believe one of the goals in the city strategic plan is also to address slum and blighted properties. So by assisting in cleaning up a neighborhood within a redevelopment area, it's,
I agree with
Meeting the
that if
goal.
we're a last resort, but I'm not sure that this has been vetted as far as all the options go. And so we're being presumptive in taking possession of this if we choose to vote for it without knowing what other beneficial things can happen to this property in the public market. And so I'm stuck with that. I'm really struggling with this because
There
it
could
seems
be
like this is such
private
a
buyers
small
of the
thing to decide
property.
on, but
There could be private buyers of the property who would rehab it and live in it or rent it out.
and so to that point, 649 and 655, are they rented or are they owned? I mean, owner occupied or rental
I don't-
properties? And the reason why I'm asking is because I think one of the challenges is to redevelop this property, but it's more attractive to the neighbors as adding it to their property to make their property more valuable. But if those are rental properties on either side, I wouldn't support that either. So without that information, I'm struggling still.
I'm also struggling, though, that if somebody does buy it and just turns it into a rental as it is, that we should not have people living in substandard housing.
I understand that, and I'm not sure that we can solve that problem at the RDA level.
Well, I think we
But
have
if it's
some
about-
influence.
Yeah.
Goes back to that quality of life issue. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to live.
No, I was speaking more about the rental inspection
Oh, okay,
issue that is at a different level than the RDA.
that is.
Yeah.
But when the property owners approach the city, it's usually because they don't want to have to deal with realtors or people going through the house. And at least that's been my experience with property owners I have dealt with.
Not even to bring anything to you if they're asking for the full market value for something. In this case, they're asking for 50% assessed value, so that's why we'd even consider it.
If you were to purchase this one, would others on either side maybe come forward and say we would want to do the same thing?
It's possible, but I wouldn't count on that.
There are some other cities that do what they call mow to own. So they may have some properties that are adjacent, and so if the, let's say the owner next door does snow shoveling and mowing for X number of years, couple of years, that they can purchase the property for a rather minimal amount. But Darlene, didn't you say that
Right.
because of what we have in it, they would have to pay that fair market value?
So how does the removal of this particular home help the entire neighborhood?
It's going to,
If there's blight in the neighborhood, in addition to this, how does this small takeout help the neighborhood?
it's gonna be a cumulative effect. You're taking one house out of the 50 that are on that block. It's similar to our streets pacer rating for the entire city. We have 280 some miles of streets. We only do a couple miles, so it doesn't make a huge impact. But in one particular neighborhood, if you accumulate enough of those properties, you do move the needle a little bit on that street or in that neighborhood. And this is one of our identified neighborhoods of need with the low and moderate income and poor housing conditions that we've spent the last couple decades trying to improve. This is just a continuation.
So if I can just share, for example, in Middle Village,
Mhm.
we had 2 of those very blighted home, well, actually, there were more than that, but 4, and then 2 of those were acquired and demoed. They're now used green spaces. The sigh of relief from some of the owners who have been long-term in the neighborhood, it's a high percentage of rental, but the owners who had this kind of sigh of relief, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that is gone. They kind of maybe stick around instead of, bail and continue to try and recoup. So I think in some instances it can be beneficial, even though it might only seem like it's a blip in the middle of the block. If there's a really bad house in the middle of the block and then it's gone, sometimes it just gives a little bit of hope to those who are still hanging on. But that's just anecdotal.
And to follow up on that, that neighborhood association is not unique. Just about every neighborhood association we work with can identify blighted properties that they say, we really wish the city would tear this blighted structure down. That's one of their favorite activities for the city to do in their neighborhood, is to tear down blighted properties.
This is a designated neighborhood?
This is, I'll let you guys explain.
It's been identified by the city as the Near East neighborhood, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, okay,
It's in the
but
Near
there's-
East
It's the it's the Near East redevelopment area.
neighborhood. Thank you.
But there's not a
no
recognized
There's
neighborhood
association.
not an
association.
association, no.
And has the neighborhood association, because we've talked about this area, has a neighborhood association discuss any potential of forming in this particular neighborhood?
Rich and I would know
People
that.
have- Yes, people have talked to Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods about establishing an association. I'd have to have Pam Reuter address that specifically, but she's mentioned people are interested in doing that, but you need a critical mass to start that, and I don't think they've reached that yet.
Thank you.
Potential parkland?
Awful narrow.
It could be if we wanted to put in something
If this
similar to
was
the
laying
Little
on the
Village
other
for
side,
a
Pocket park,
neighborhood-
like a, we don't call it a pocket park, but
Neighborhood
it's,
green space or community garden area.
Yeah.
Is there any urgency in buying this now?
Ms. Bryant?
They've offered it.
The owner approached the city. They don't want to have to continue to maintain it.
Completely vacant now, right?
It's completely vacant, and
go fast.
because it is vacant, we don't have to worry about any relocation costs either, which could add considerable amount to the next.
I wouldn't even bring it to you.
are there any other questions or thoughts? Andrea, could you please call the roll?
Lasky,
Aye.
Sonic,
I just can't, do we make comments or no? Okay.
Stam,
Nay.
Belter,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
O'Meara.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-1.
1915, authorize land disposition of 1302 Eastman Street to Habitat for Humanity, $13,500.
Move 19-15.
Second?
Discussion.
Income.
All right. Take the roll.
If I could point out, one of those properties that you don't, wasn't in a neighborhood association, but it was available, and the RDA decided last year to acquire it for the potential redevelopment, and this one's working out.
Do we know how much we spent for that? Was that in the
30,000, I think, was the
So-
acquisition price. Somewhere.
Acquisition, and what about demo?
City tore it down, so maybe between abatement and demolition, maybe another 6.
So we didn't
36.
acquire it with CDBG.
Yes,
We did, but because it's Habitat, we don't have to do market.
this
fair
is the
market
fair
value.
market value.
So we
Even-
spent 30,
Correct.
40, but we're selling for.
We never make
We
any
always-
profit. Nope. Nobody will buy it for $40,000. So we have just sold the lots for what the assessed value is. Yep.
Okay,
In this case, it would be for an affordable house.
okay. Any other questions, discussion?
Where's the weight rug company? Is that just
That's-
Block
north?
north?
Just block north.
Okay.
Yep.
That-
Yeah, on that map right there.
Really cool if they'd done that.
Oh, it's great, yeah.
All right, can we please call the roll?
Lasky,
Aye.
Sonic,
I,
Stam,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
O'Meara.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
1916, authorized land disposition of 421 Monroe Street for Habitat for Humanity,
Move approval.
12,100.
Move approval.
Discussion. No discussion? Please call the roll.
Lasky,
Aye.
Sonic,
I,
Stam,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
O'Meara.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
1917, approved general development plan for multi-use developments located at Marion Road redevelopment sites H, I, and J Merge LLC.
Move 1917.
Second?
Discussion? I think we have a representative here for Merge too, if we have questions.
How quickly?
Still hoping that we'd be able to get in the ground at least on one building in 2020. I'm sorry, 2019. This year. This year.
That's awesome.
That's what we're working for.
Yes.
Quick improvement.
But where are we in the process now? You've got the buildings plan, the footprints plan, your use plan, you're probably doing your capital stack, or are we all
Yep.
pre-funded? I mean, where are you?
Yep, we're working on all of that. Right now, we made an application for a site investigation grant through WEDC. So our actual site investigation is on hold until we hear back from them. Darlene can give you more details on that. But beyond that, we have actually turned loose our architectural folks to actually begin the design process. And we're working with a couple of different area retailers to see if there is first floor demand that would warrant a certain building going first. But as of right now, we're planning on Site J.
The plan was approved by the council last night? Is that what it was?
Yes, it was.
General,
Okay.
the GDP, yes.
What are the next formal approvals that have to happen from our side? We have all these different steps and,
Council approval of the TIF plan and developer agreement, and then RDA approval of the developer agreement as well.
And the specific improvement.
And then the final site plan, yes, by Plan Commission, Council, and RDA.
just like 6 more meetings?
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
really, I mean,
I don't mind being in Oshkosh this time of year.
Big flies.
We'll make them quick.
So it's not my ignorance is only because I'm so new, but it's not uncommon that the city council would approve something before the redevelopment board?
There's multiple steps that you have to go through for a site like this.
Okay.
RDA owns the property, and one of the requirements of the sale is that they review and approve the redevelopment in a redevelopment area. The zoning code also requires that to go through plan commission and council, so it's just a matter of when the meetings actually occur.
Okay.
The development agreement, the TIF has to follow a statutory process, which wouldn't involve the RDA. A development agreement would involve the RDA and the council, and those potentially include closed session to talk about development agreement parameters.
Okay. This is exciting.
Yes.
I want to move here. So, do we have any more thoughts or discussion on 1917? Are we ready to call the roll?
Motion?
Yep.
Motion is second.
do it.
Yes, please call the roll.
Lasky,
Aye.
Sonic,
Aye.
Stamp,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
O'Meara.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
1918, support projects and programs proposed in the 2019 CDBG Community Development Block Grant Action Plan.
Well, that's a motion.
Does it require action?
Yes.
I'll move it.
A second.
Discussion.
Only 2 pages out?
For the cover memo,
Is
then
that
you
the-
can, the plan
Is
itself
that the
is many.
redacted summary?
There's nothing redacted in my memos, thank you.
And my only question on this relates back to our last RDA meeting, and if our funding, due to those pending purchases, changes some of what we had planned, what's in your detail,
Mhm.
and what we're going to be funding with what we know now. Third question, but you know what I mean?
Yes, with the 2 projects that aren't being done, I think we have still time to recover. I don't know about the 18 funds. Are the 18 funds going to be spent in a timely basis based on what's transpired so far?
Yes, they'll hopefully still be spent in a timely manner. We still have a couple of properties for demolition, but as the 19 action plan is proposed, though, the Central City $300,000 is acquisition of slum and blight properties.
Okay.
So if you are not looking to proceed with acquisition of slum and blight properties on a standard basis, then I potentially could have a problem meeting timeliness ratios, yes.
What are the public services that are budgeted for 117,000? What does that mean?
The city, the city formed a consortium with United Way and the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation to better serve the low to moderate income citizens of Oshkosh that need additional assistance with public service activities
Okay,
and needs.
okay.
So, yeah, like Literacy Council, Christine Ann,
Advocap.
Tri-County Dental, Advocap House, or, Advocap Nutrition.
Okay, and
Their
how do
actual
they apply
project.
for those grants? Are they
Right.
grants or just,
They're grants.
Okay.
Right now, we are accepting applications until May 22nd.
okay,
And then we have a committee of members from each of the entities that review, rank, and allocate funds based on the amount that we have for public services.
And an annual basis, is that a good amount, or is it, does it not meet the need?
It never
meet
meets
the
the
need.
need,
That's the cap that we can spend on that, so
Right.
Okay.
max that out.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, the
I think-
request will come in anywhere from 230,000 to 300,000.
Annually?
Depending, and, yeah, the
Okay.
requests. But people know now that there isn't that much, so they'll usually keep their requests low. And we've always been in we've never been in a position to give anybody full funding, so we then try to figure out, well, what's the max we could give any one program? And it's on a rated system, so.
Okay, got it, thank you, it's helpful.
So, so you guys, when you would do that, you would look at funding less of a request, but for more of the requestors, right? Or the grant requests?
In some ways, but we still want to make the amount meaningful to the program, so that, I mean, I don't think our goal is to fund as many programs as we can. We do rank them. And so we look at those that we really think rank highly, and then say, at that level, if we were to fund all of these, what would it cost us? And then we sort of do a prorated, we don't even prorate it, we just kind of say, this is a max we can give any one program, and then we figure it out from there.
And when you say we take applications through May 22nd, does that mean through the consortium? And how does someone access or make those grant requests? Is it through the foundation or
No, it's
United
through
Way?
the city of Oshkosh.
It is through,
It-
so here in
yep.
City Hall.
Yep. It is on the city's website, under the Economic Development Division webpage. The, and, yeah,
Interested parties.
so there was
About the-
probably between 30 and 40 notices that went out to various public service agencies.
Is
that
it
we were accepting.
assumed, I'm sorry, is it assumed that because someone applied previously and we're sending out those notices that they're gonna continue year after year? No?
It's totally up to the committee members. city staff, foundation staff, and United Way staff really do not have any ranking approval. It's up to the committee. We guide them as far as, from the city standpoint, if an activity is eligible under the public service activity. But it's totally up to the committee members. We don't have any ranking.
We do
I
see,
guess
we
what-
do see new, repetitive proposals. So agencies will, one program might come in 3-4 years, but we do ask them, how do they intend to fund that program? Because this is not guaranteed every
Right.
year.
Right.
So that they shouldn't think of it as sort of just a regular allocation that they may get every year. It's not that. They do go through a ranking process.
But I guess my question is, if you send out notices to those 30 or so entities, are they assuming that that notice is inviting them to apply again?
They can apply. There's no guarantees of funding until the
Right,
committee
right,
reviews
I
them. But yeah,
understand that.
no, it's not any,
No, I know what you're saying.
yeah, I do too.
Are we not
but-
expanding the pool? But there is a public notice that also goes out.
Yes.
So there is a public notice. So if you haven't, in the past 5 years, if you haven't applied, there is that public notice that goes out so people know. And a lot of us already just tell people, oh, by the way, the CDBG grant
Sure.
proposals are out. Why don't you, if you have a program, please apply.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions, thoughts? All right, on 1918, Andrea, can you please call the roll?
Lasky,
Aye.
Pollock,
I,
Stam,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Take it away. The
For the
RDA,
rest of my staff out, so
RDA manual training.
all you left with is me at this
We
point.
should have put you guys at the front of this.
yeah.
Yeah.
What it should have is just a copy of a manual. We've done this with some of our other boards and commissions as well. It's intended to be a resource for you. If you open up to the first page, kind of goes through the contents and the page numbers and what it covers. So if you have questions regarding public records, you can go to that page and look at it. So we covered some general, just governmental issues and concerns, open meetings, public records, ethics, Oshkosh Board and Commission General Rules of Order, which you guys are actually an independent entities, so those don't necessarily apply to you, but they're based off Robert's Rules of Order and the most common motions and practices. So we included them because it's just a good, easy resource. And, with your interconnection with the other city entities, these are the rules they use, so it's most familiar to staff, it's most familiar to us. So it may be something you guys want to look at adopting formally for yourselves as well. But because you're in a somewhat unique position where you are an independent entity, it doesn't just automatically apply to you.
I'm sorry, is that pages 16 through 24?
That is, yes,
Okay.
16 to 24. We cover purpose and interrelationship of the community development, some of the other city boards and commissions and other resources. Then we really get into the meat of the RDA, your composition, role, and authority, some guidance for decision-making, and then some sheets. So I am going to really fly through the first part because we're running late already. The open meetings, basically, meetings are going to be open unless you have a statutorily sufficient reason to close them. In your guys' case, you do, a lot of our boards and commissions don't have closed meetings at all. In your case, you do have them primarily for bargaining. We talked about development agreements coming up. We close it, not necessarily in those cases for the public, but for the other party. So it would give them a great advantage if they can hear us and what our side is willing to offer. So generally, though, most meetings are going to be open. What the test is, it's a purpose and a numbers test. basically, if you are doing business that would involve the RDA or gathering information about something that could come before you as the RDA, you need to be aware that you might need to have public notice of that. The other thing is the numbers test. So 7 of you, your quorum is 4. So basically, if you talk to more than one other person on the RDA about something, you should start worrying about whether the open meetings law, if that discussion should be taking place in public. The reason we have meetings is so you guys can discuss things and take care of it. So again, most of that should happen in open session. We go through some of the, special considerations, walking quorums. So if I talk to Lori and, that's just 2 of us, but then Lori calls Sue and says, hey, I talked to Lynn and this is what we're agreeing to. And then we call, another member. It's essentially you're having a meeting, you're just walking it around. So that's one to be careful of. Meetings of multiple bodies or other notices of observation. The one that Dave was going to cover this, so I'm just winging this off the top of my head. The one that's coming to mind immediately is like state of the city. So that's not necessarily an RDA meeting, but the city clerk's office will notice it for all the boards and commissions because we expect there may be enough of you there. And we don't want you to show up and then go, you need to go home now. And so, if you're going to attend something that's of general interest, if you think you might go to the plan commission because one of your projects is coming up and you think, I'm going to go to the plan commission and just see how that goes. Let Andrea know so that she can say, okay, I know I have one. If I hear from more, she'll just notice it. It's really easy to put the notices together and to cover you. And then we don't get upstairs and go, now we have too many and one of you needs to go sit in the other room and watch it on TV instead of being in the room. So it's just something to be watchful for. Andrea will watch out for you and take care of you if you let her know, I'm going to show up at this other thing. She knows how to handle it then. Yeah.
That when we email our attendants and stuff, is it just required that we use your email address to respond to, or is there another? I think we had this conversation once before, and we
They have
decided
changed.
to reply all.
Yeah, you really shouldn't reply all on things because although there's no direct case on it, the AG's office had issued an opinion that says be wary of email. Primarily because if everybody uses email like I do, I respond in email just like I'm talking to you. So I'm very casual. I will reply all. It's basically a conversation. So the AG's office recognized that and said, hey, you need to be careful even though you're creating public records. So it's still theoretically open to the public. That the AG's office said you need to be careful about that because again, discussion should occur in open session, not through email, not through these other means.
That I get, and to keep the public record theory, if I'm responding to an email that's generated from the RDA, all I need to do is respond directly to Andrea. Is that
Yep.
correct? Thank you.
Yep.
That's great clarification.
And her stuff is all archived on the city system, and you're good.
Perfect.
If an open meetings law applies, what is it? Timing is probably the big one. You have to give at least 24 hours notice. We try to give more than that generally because 24 hours is pretty short. So you have to have a notice that reasonably tells people what you're going to talk about. If I read your notice and I'm not sure what you're going to talk about, that's a problem. The public isn't going to know either. Closed sessions have to be noticed. You're limited to those statutory exceptions. We have had some questions about confidentiality as regards to closed sessions. So we added a little blurb in here into the manuals now about that. The open meetings law doesn't require that matters discussed in closed session remain confidential. But the reason you're doing a closed session is because there's concern about confidentiality. And there may be issues with jeopardizing the city's interests in bargaining and negotiations. And also, you might face allegations of misconduct in office if you are improperly sharing things and it does put the city in a bad position. So it's just something, again, to be wary. If we're in closed session, we're in closed session for a reason. It shouldn't be shared beyond that until you know that it's out in the open and things, it's no longer necessary to keep it closed and confidential. Citizen participation, you guys are great. You ask for citizen comments. Technically, you're going more than what the law requires. So that's all good. I'm gonna skip to public records. Again, staff is generally gonna take care of that for you. So if we get a request for records, we will let you know that we have a request for records. If you have anything that hasn't been copied to the city or that you haven't gotten directly from the city, you need to let us know that, but otherwise, generally, we're gonna take care of that for you. Your 2-minute ethics lesson, be good. There's generally kind of two restrictions on you. You can't personally profit from holding your public office, so you can't, if someone offers you something, hey, I want to take you out for a nice dinner so we can talk about my project, and, you know, I'm going to pay for dinner and drinks and all those things, be very wary of that, because you are accepting something of value, and it's because of your position. Hacker tickets, those kind of things, we'll avoid that, but you have a question.
If we wanted to take advantage of an opportunity that's it's open for interest, would we be able to if we recuse ourselves from the RDA authority?
You wanna like buy one of the RDA lots?
Buy a lot, yeah, something like that.
If you are interested in that, we need to take a closer look at that. You probably should call one of us in the attorney's office, and we'll go through those kind of issues specifically, because there are restrictions on doing business with a body that you're a member of. So we'd want to take a closer look at that, and that's just a good point. If you have questions on any of the ethics stuff, we've given you a bunch of information here, but if you have questions, call us, talk to me, talk to Dave, who's no longer here, or Amy, who's no longer here, but all three of us are available for that. So, the second thing is kind of getting to what don't participate in decisions in which you have a personal financial interest, or in which a member of your immediate family has a personal financial interest, or a business that you own a major part of, or are an officer of, or those kind of things. Behind these sheets are about maybe 6 or 8 pages of sheets from the Wisconsin Ethics Commission. They're basically walk-through sheets. So if you have a question and you go, oh, I don't know, I don't know if I should recuse myself, or if if I'm being too sensitive about this, these sheets, I include them because they're just really good. The state did a really good job on them. You can kind of walk through them. If you still have questions, or you just want to double check it, call us. We will also use these same sheets and help you walk through the questions. So they're included because they actually are really useful and good. So now you know they're in there, and if you have questions, it's a good place for you to start.
If you're involved and you recuse yourself from the vote, can you still participate in discussion?
No, you should, if you're out, you're out. Because you could actually influence just by the nature of the discussion. So once you've made that decision to be out, you're out. The AG's office takes a really strong stance on that and says you should leave the room, you can't, be in. Typically, there's no case on that. It really depends on the situation, and certainly you're not in the room giving people the thumbs up or, evil eye or whatever the appropriate reaction may be in that situation. But if you, a lot of times going out for a really short vote and is more disruptive to the meeting than the real issue is. Sit back, take a seat in the audience, stay quiet, but it may be more disruptive if you're running in and out of the room. So, and technically there still are public meetings and you're still a member of the public. So we have not traditionally taken that strong of a stance against it, but I do make you aware that the AG's office takes a much stronger view of it. The rules of order, we've already kind of talked about. They're basically cheat sheets of your most common motions and amendments. I get to your bylaws later, but along with these sheets and just looking at your bylaws have not been updated since the commission was formed. At some point, that's probably something we should maybe do a workshop and take a look at and see if there are things that need to be updated, and that may be the time to also look at those common rules and what you want to, if you want to adopt those as well or modify them or whatever. So, then we get to purpose and interrelationship. I'm on starting on page 25. It's just basically a listing of the various boards and commissions and just a little blurb about each and what they do. We start with you guys because in this room you're the most important. Then we go to city council, plan commission. These are the most common ones. As staff, we identified that you're likely going to interact with. There are more city boards and commissions. These are just the ones we thought were probably most pertinent to you guys.
Can we sit on more than one?
Typically, you can. With the RDA, we have to be careful because there's a statutory requirement that RDAs cannot have more than, I think it's 2 public officials. And if you're a member of the Plan Commission, you're a public official. The mayor is a public official. So we have to be a little careful because, again, you guys are just a little unique in that regard. And that's a statutory limitation on you. So I think it goes back to the idea that you are an independent board and commission, and if we start stacking it with public officials, you lose that independence. So there are some entities independent of the city of Oshkosh. We also included, just for your information and reference, the Regional Planning Commission. You will occasionally run across them. Go H&I, Go EDC. These are on 27 and 28, and neighborhood associations. So then we really hit the meat of it starting at page 29, and that's your composition, role, and authority. And I think this is where, under membership and terms, no more than 2 may be officers of this city by statute. So you are 7 members. You have 5-year staggered terms. 1 member shall be a member of the Common Council. There is a statutory requirement that when the mayor and council are making appointments, we attempt to designate representatives from the general public, labor and industry, finance, business, and civic organizations. So when the mayor is making appointments, that's something for her to keep in mind. The effect of the creation of the RDA is, again, you're an independent body. Once the city created you, the city gives away some of the authority and the responsibility for those redevelopment activities, and you guys pick that up. The next pages talk about some of the specific things out of the statute and gives you the statutory reference for your authority, and basically all of them relate to the first bullet point on page 30, carrying out blight elimination, slum clearance, urban renewal programs and projects. You have all powers necessary and incidental to effect those purposes. And then the statute goes through and lists a couple of pages of specific things that you are allowed to do in furtherance of that.
Along those lines, has this body in their bylaws come up with the definition of blight?
In the bylaws. Your bylaws, as long as she brought it up, are back around page 50-ish, 54, thank you.
I believe the definition of blight is
Is
established
in,
by statute.
yeah, there is a statutory definition of blight, and we actually will get to that as we get into the decision pages toward the end. And it's also, at the very end of your book, I also included the statutes slightly pared down to remove the references to first-class cities, because that's Milwaukee, and we're not Milwaukee anyway, so you get the statutes in a couple different ways. You get the references here, but as you can see, if you skim the statute numbers, it's kind of all over the place. So rather than make you search through the statute, we made a bulleted list and gave you those authorities and the things that you can do. Legislative and quasi-judicial roles, I'll just mention, because a lot of the things you do are going to be considered legislative. They are things that are policy-driven, affect the community as a whole or a large part of the community. When there are things you're doing, like when you make a blight determination for an individual property that are called quasi-judicial, those you need to be more careful of, and we have to provide with due process for those determinations. So we do have to just be a little bit aware when we're dealing with individual properties, individual property rights, that we give notice, that we have, I'm lost my train of thought, sorry, adequate time and notice, opportunity to be heard for the property owner if they would like to be heard, and that we disclose to people the information that we're making our decisions on, so that we have good staff reports, we have good resolutions written up that give you the basis for those decisions. So just something to be aware of when you're potentially affecting individual property rights, and you guys as a committee do that on occasion. The one that, again, comes to mind is the spot blight and acquisition of individual properties,
Can I
like
go
you
to that
did.
for a second? Can
Yeah.
we spot blight a property without acquiring it?
Yes,
If we do that,
All
does it,
redevelopment areas.
but you are still potentially affecting that person's property rights by declaring it blighted, so you would want to make sure that they have the notice, opportunity to be heard, that, you're following. And a big thing with the quasi-judicial is don't be having conversations, I'm telling you, otherwise, the meetings are for your conversations, especially in quasi-judicial hearings. If the property owner or a neighbor calls you, encourage them to show up at the meeting, because everything should take place at the meeting, and anything you're going to consider in those cases needs to be out and open in the public, so that if the property owner wants to challenge it, they know what you made your decision on, and they can say, my neighbor's not correct, my property is not 20 feet wide, it's 35 feet wide, or it is not a substandard lot, or whatever the issue may be.
if the RDA chose to blight a property, does that kick it into any other factor for the city from a codes or zoning? It's just a designation, but it's meaningless in regard.
We have spot blighted properties for any other organizations, like the Housing Authority. We spot blighted the Waite Rug property.
Okay.
It allowed them to apply for federal tax credits and stuff like that.
Thank you.
One of the things that you can do is actually issue bonds and for blight elimination kind of bonds. And so that would be a case where you might spot blight it, but you're not going to acquire it, but it's for the purpose of helping a project along.
Great, thank you.
Again, I feel like I'm really flying through this, but you have it, and if you are interested and you need it for reference, we do have, we do have it printed out. We tried to use not as much legalese as, although every once in a while I still slip back into attorney mode, and I like to write that way. So if you find stuff and you say, hey, I don't know what this means, let me know, because I will catch that in then the next round of this. The one thing I would just note in judicial appeals, courts are generally gonna uphold your determinations as long as what you've done is reasonable. Is it something you had authority to do? Did you stay within your procedures? Did you apply proper standards for making your decision? Could a reasonable person have reached your decision? So again, this applies mostly to those quasi-judicial decisions, but just try to make sure we're acting in a reasonable manner, and that we include the basis for our decisions so that if somebody would challenge it, and we have to go across, those of us who are not here, would have to go across the street, they have the basis for the decision in the record so that we can say, yes, there was a reasonable basis for this. And I think these guys do a really good job with the resolutions and getting the information and the findings into those resolutions for you and into the memos. So hopefully that's never going to be an issue for us, but we just try to mention it so that it doesn't become an issue.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
Has this board ever issued bonds before?
We did
I-
revenue bonds is what I recall. but
I
those were
recall at
backed-
least once,
They were
yeah.
backed by a TIF increment stream for TIF number 21, which we prepaid early because the interest rates dropped a lot. So that might have been before your time.
Okay.
I will actually let you know, I've had a call from an attorney who is possibly interested in bonds through the RDA. We're at the very early stages of talking through what's your project.
For development?
Would it even apply? Yep. So you might potentially have one coming forward. I'm not, at this point, I'm still gathering information to see if it would even be something that would meet the criteria that we would bring to you.
That's great.
But it is a
They're great
potential.
facility. They're great. It's a great facility
Yep.
to be able to have, so that's great.
And in the cases where we do issue bonds, the city has bond counsel. We use Chapman and Cutler out of Chicago, who work really well with us on all the city bonding projects. And they have people who work with these kind of bonds as well. So we would bring them to the table to make sure that we have everything covered and that you guys are doing everything that you need to do, and we're all very comfortable with it. So starting at page 35, we have some we call them guidance sheets, I think, guidance for decision making. These are some of the most common things that are going to come before you, and just kind of, again, some sort of cheat sheets. If we have a urban renewal, a blight elimination, urban renewal project area, here's the process you're going to follow. Here's the definitions of a blighted area right here to try and help you if you're working through it. What is a blighted area? It's right here. You can look at these sheets and they will give you a good start as to the process you're going to go through and what the statutes require, what findings you're going to make, and hopefully as we work through, these are good. This is the first time we've done them for you guys, so I didn't print this on stone for a reason. So as you go through, if there are corrections, changes, things that would help you out, please let me know, or Andrea or Alan, so that we can get those changes into here for you. I'm gonna go to, I think we had a land acquisition, property acquisitions. We have both property acquisitions within a redevelopment area and blighted property acquisitions not within a redevelopment area, which is like what you did tonight. It gave you kind of a typical script if to go through. If the property owner shows up, you would want to make sure they have the opportunity to speak. You basically followed this tonight, so it's great. The one thing, we did give you the definition of blighted property there on page 45, so it's right with that. So if you want to take a look at that and say, hey, does this fit? Again, it's right with those sheets for you. Where
Twice.
you have consideration,
Page
That same
43
one,
and
right.
45.
Yep,
Yep.
it's also on 36.
But
I
really
overkilled
good.
it for you,
Thank
so
you.
you don't have to search too far. At the end, there's a note, like on the blighted property, statutes and ordinances allow you to consider all relevant information in addition to the determination whether the property is blighted within the meaning of the statute. Then we would give you additional consideration. For this case, we just say, see the general policy considerations listed on, starting on page 47. If there were ordinance or statutory ones, they are listed at that end too, so that, again, hopefully, when you get to these kinds of issues, the idea is that this sheet's gonna give you all the information for, if it's a property acquisition within a redevelopment area, here's your statutory reference, here's the procedure you're gonna follow. Do you have to is it a recommendation to the council? It is, because they're gonna hold the purse strings. So, there's one where statutes allow you to consider all the things. Here are some specific considerations, and then take a look at those general ones at the end. Should I disclose, Alan, that the general ones at the end, again, they're general ones. Staff, we sat down and we made these up. We took them from other sources, and they are actually come from a number of different places. The planning manual that is put out by the UW Extension, the city's gift policy, we looked at all the statutes. I'm trying to think what else we looked at. I know those were the three big places we got information from for these. And again, it's general considerations. It's just some guidelines that, hey, what should I be looking at? What are some considerations to get you started looking at anything? So, again, not written in stone. We made them up. So we could have missed some. There might be some that we thought are great that you guys, after you look at them, go, well, nice try, Lynn, but why don't we reword this a little? So I am open to all of that. We did try and, like I said, have some basis for where we got them from, but and I think they're all solid policy considerations. But once you go through them, there's certainly room to have some feedback on those. And again, I'm suggesting we may, after I looked at your bylaws, and that we may want to have a session where, and then I promise I'll bring my friends back, where we can talk about the bylaws and we can talk about some of these issues to see if there are, suggestions for us, and go through that with a little more detail. Because I threw a lot at you really fast.
Didn't we run into a timing issue in terms of even just like
in your
when?
bylaws, there's a timing issue about appointments. Yeah, that really needs to be corrected. So I throw that out as one of your meetings when you don't have quite so many items on your agenda, that you might have time for a workshop. That would be a suggestion, is we probably should look at those bylaws, get at least that one issue corrected. But as we went back and looked, I cannot find that they've been reviewed or updated since their initial adoption, which was, thank you. So it's been enough time. It's probably a good thing to take a look at.
We need another definition for blighted properties. There's another one on page 57 of the state statute.
Yeah, we got the
Let's
message.
drive that home.
And I think you did, you succeeded, Terry.
Okay, any quick questions? Or otherwise, like I said, we can plan to come back, and that'll give you some time to flip through and look at the things that most interest you too, and come up with more questions.
Just a quick question then, Lynn. So, Plan Commission has to determine findings, right, in formal findings formats. but RDA does not, because I'm like looking at some of the language
Generally,
here.
the difference, I think, is in the RDA, Andrea's incorporating the findings into a formal resolution for you. So you would have them in that formal resolution and adopting them by adopting the resolution.
But for example, so,
But the plan commission doesn't have that, so we make them
Okay.
adopt them out of the staff reports.
okay, okay. So, for example, page 57, where there's a description of findings. So when we do a blight designation, that would need to be in that resolution.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a complete one.
Okay, so it's sufficient to say that there are conditions of blight that exist as opposed to like actually going through and naming what that is.
I'm sorry, one more time
So,
for me?
all right, if you look at page 57, for example,
Yep.
where there's a beginning of the blighted area description, and there are specific factors in there. But in our resolution, if we say under findings and determinations, just a kind of catch-all generic phrase that says conditions of blight exist, we don't have to name what that is.
I would recommend you name, if it, more is generally going to be better. If there are specific things that we are saying, that we're hanging our hat on, it just makes it a stronger resolution. But
So in that event, for example, you might take their existence of conditions which endanger life or property by fire and other causes, and then you would say because the structure
Is
is XYZ.
dilapidated, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Okay.
Curious.
All right. I will hang out because I see you have other things that might have questions for me, so.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thanks for staying with us.
So next we have the executive director's report.
Yes, starting with the Oshkosh Arena property, the RDA still owns the property. We haven't closed on that yet. We have been working with DNR and Fox Valley Pro Basketball to figure out the environmental liability issues. We've been in contact with them, but at this point, I have nothing new to report beyond that we've presented the information to them, and they're still deliberating how they want to proceed. Is there anything, since you're here, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, we provided information in mid-April, and I've been touching base with their attorneys periodically about every week since, and I sent another email out today and had not gotten a response yet, so.
And we've done everything that they've asked us to do.
Yes, we are waiting for them at this point.
All we can do.
Yep.
Then I can give you a quick update on the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. The Rock the Block event did occur in April and seemed to be very successful. We're planning on future Rock the Block locations around the city. And we still try to incorporate the Healthy Neighborhoods types of projects into the same Rock the Block neighborhoods, as well as potentially block grant if the opportunity presents itself. Otherwise, we still continue to operate in removing possible blight, and those are the conditions that we've gotten direction from RDA to pursue, and we'll continue to bring those properties forward as they present themselves. South Shore redevelopment area. Actually, there's breaking news on that. I'll skip over Sawdust District planning. That's continuing. Morgan District is almost done. Minor electrical work to be done. It's the Pioneer and Pioneer Drive Riverwalk and the 9th Avenue extension to the CN Railroad. The CN Railroad actually did sign the quitclaim deed a week or two ago, so that we have no more claims on Pioneer Drive from Main Street over to the railroad track, so we. sent our-
Congratulations.
Yes.
That's a
Nice
big
job.
accomplishment.
Yep. Only took 9 months, which apparently was pretty quick for CN, I'm told.
Stop telling us about the labor pains and show us the baby. You said 9 months, right?
9 months,
Yeah.
yes, I'm gonna have to remember that. Let's see, and we did submit the grant application for the Riverwalk for construction in 2020, based on that. And then just last night, the council approved the acquisition of the Decades property that parallels Pioneer Drive from Main Street all the way down to the railroad tracks and technically all the way down to 10th Avenue, so. That property, we should be closing on that by the end of June. And then I'd be anticipating we put together a request for proposals for the redevelopment of that neighborhood. That the RDA has spent the last 16 years acquiring properties for that purpose.
Does-
How about the WPS property?
We've talked to both their operations and real estate people, and it seems promising, but we've not closed on any WPNS property. They don't use that diamond anymore for their transmission.
Can I just ask you to clarify something, Alan? So when you talk about that as a neighborhood, are you also referring to the shoulder residential area? Or are you only talking about the Sawdust District?
In this particular case, my neighborhood is the RFP neighborhood, which would be the RDA-owned properties.
That sub-district
Yep.
up in the upper part of
Yep,
the Sawdust
right,
District?
like
Okay.
joining the Fox River, west to Main Street, east to the railroad tracks, and down to 9th at this point in time.
Does the acquisition cost go into that market value requirement that we have to sell RDA properties?
We're acquiring that without block grant funds, so we can
So
sell
that's only
that.
block grant, that, okay.
Yep, so that does not factor into the sale then.
But there's a different, whatever, however, they still have to establish a market value. but-
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Let's see, so that was the good news on the Pioneer area. You heard the good news about Marion and Pearl redevelopment area, parcels H, I, and J. Those are the last 3 pieces the RDA owns. And we're hoping to sell them prior to their development. And then last but not least, Sawyer Street, we can report Accucom and Reps Bar have been demolished, and vegetation should start growing again later this spring. And then lastly, just as a reminder, the multimodal trail, we're hoping to install the first piece along Oshkosh Corporation's global headquarters, and the part that goes over Rainbow Memorial Park to this intersection wouldn't happen until 2021. So 19 would be by Oshkosh Corp., 20 would be Pioneer Drive, and then 21 would be back out to Rainbow Memorial Park with Riverwalk projects. And hopefully I'm trying to find another project to do in 2021, since we're using TAP funds for 21, which is not the DNR, it's DOT, so we might have an opportunity to do 2 Riverwalk pieces in 2021 if we can find the right location.
The Oshkosh Bridge is gonna be, Oshkosh Ave Bridge is gonna be taken down this winter for a period of time, correct?
Will be maintenance, yes.
Closed.
Yes, it will be closed starting late December, January, and
Through
going
about
to
May, right?
Will
At
they
least
make
May,
any,
maybe, depending on how it goes, yes.
will they make any improvements for the bike trail on that bridge?
They're not making any widening for that.
Dangerous. 10-inch drop down to the road is, it's like, oh.
Mhm. That was one of the questions city staff had for them. They said if the city would like to pay for that, they'd entertain the idea. But right now, it's just a maintenance project. That's all I have.
All right. So,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.